official levels of both aid and loans, China has now emerged, this is the latest data which is coming out, as the largest supplier of capital in the global system. Between 2000 and 2024, China has distributed in aid and loans the equivalent of $2.1 trillion, more than the United States. If you look at the latest figures for 2023, which is available 24, again, they are the largest single supplier of global financial flows. So this is a world in which there is a complete turnaround of the capacity to project global economic power and global economic influence. And this, I think, is of great relevance to us. The most significant emerging development now is the change in the frontiers of technology. There was no doubt at all that countries such as the United States and Western Europe were the dominant players in the world of technology and continue to be so even today. But if you now look at the latest developments, I was recently looking at some material which has come out of Australian think tanks which were reported in the New York Times. In a whole range of the most advanced technologies now, China has overtaken the United States. I think they looked at the 10 dominant technologies of the 21st century, and in terms of publication of research papers, in terms of research initiatives and expenditures, in a whole range of areas, between a period of 2015 and 2025, China has overtaken the United States. This has now manifested itself. We are seeing these conversations going on in Berlin today with regard to global climate change. The latest advances in green technology, which are at the cutting edge of modern technological research, in the manufacture of solar panels, lithium batteries, and electronic vehicles. In all these areas now, China's output is exceeding the output in all these three areas of both the US and Europe combined. So the world which Bangladesh now needs to reposition itself today is a world in which power has relocated itself. What do we do and how do we reposition ourselves? Historically, most of our orientation was westwards. When Bangladesh came into existence, and over the course of the next 10 to 15 years, up to 12% of our GDP was underwritten by foreign aid. And most of this came from the West, the US, World Bank, IMF. They were the dominant suppliers of foreign aid. Today, our dependence on foreign aid has come down to about 2% of GDP. Whatever aid we are receiving from traditional sources, most of it is not even utilized. We have about $50 billion of foreign aid just lying in our pipeline, unutilized and slowly utilized. The main sources now of capital investment and financing coming to us are essentially coming from countries within the Asian region. Japan is a big player, certainly. China is now got investment projects funded not just through aid, but through loans and a variety of other sources in the range of about $40 billion in Bangladesh. And this again is a factor which is manifesting itself all around the region. Today, China has emerged as the major trading partner of every South Asian country, not just East Asian. And This has been done by building up global value chains in which the growth of countries are now contingent on their capacity to access Chinese markets through value chains and to draw on Chinese capital and resources to sustain their own export capacity. So in these circumstances, what I would argue is that the world you want to reach out to is a world in which we have to see where our resources and markets are available. I see our main preoccupation today still seems obsessed with being able to retain our markets for ready-made garments in the United States, and of course to continue to perpetuate our status as the least developed country so that we can retain our duty-free access to the European Union. But these, if I may say so, are yesterday's strategies. At the end of the day, our export market in the US is only worth about $8 billion. And this again is perpetually at risk because we do not know how our access will be influenced by the changing, the instability of Trump, the policies of President Trump, which is basically a highly fluid entity, very transactional, and therefore which has no consistency and predictability attached to it. We are living in a world in which, as the Western powers, and particularly the US, have now lost their hegemonic influence, they are increasingly resorting to political expedience, and I define now what is really going on in the world of tariffs, in the world of blocking technology flows, as essentially political actions rather than market-driven actions. This is influencing now the way in which the once dominant countries are reacting to the changing economic order. This essentially means that there is really no consistency or sustainability to this order. The tariff policies of the United States make very little economic sense. They are partially predicted on an ancient and discredited philosophy of import substituting industrialization, against which all our countries, including Bangladesh, were admonished both by the US and by the World Bank and IMF as an unworkable strategy. We are also persuaded that if you are not going in for import substituting in protective industrialization, you can promote exports by putting pressure on your trading partners and using your your domestic market as an instrument of pressure and blackmail to trade with you. Now, neither of these are sustainable policies because they are not sustained by market forces, and therefore you are going to come to a point where you will have neither an acceleration of industrialization, nor will you have a capacity to have markets which will remain open and sustainable, which are being forced on particular countries. So in these circumstances, I would say that Bangladesh would again be well advised to look to countries where they can access capital more readily, to look to countries where the future market growth is taking place. The big failure of government, of our policymakers, and also I would say of our private sector, has been our failure to take advantage of the two major markets in the world which are on our doorstep, in China and in India. Since 2010, we have had duty-free access to the Indian market. In the last couple of years, we have had duty-free access to the Chinese market. But beyond the traditional areas of exports, we have neither chosen to diversify nor to develop working arrangements to plug ourselves into the supply chains of both countries so that we can take advantage of their size and their growth. So if we want to reposition ourselves in the global system, we need to have much smarter and more dynamic policymakers, and we need to also have much more adventurous and creative private sector who must get out of the cocoon, the LDC cocoon, in which they want to live permanently, and to in fact expect that you will continue to get your duty-free privileges. This is not the way the world is going to evolve, and this is a world in which we now have to position ourselves. Whether under the emerging new order, we will get more creative policy making and more adventurous private enterprises to be seen. Thank you very much.